Today is the day where I pay homage to a brilliant mentor who happens to shape my life. So it is, I call it a eulogy, but actually it's more a tribute, I would say. We are talking about none other than Dr. MS Swaminathan. And today I would actually like to pay homage and tribute, setting in context what he has done for the nation and what was he more as a person. As a person, who was he? We all know MS as a scientist and what he has done for Indian agriculture. But what was he like as a person? I would not want to forget Dr. M.V. Rao. Both these were my external guides. M.V. Rao was almost like a right hand to MS in the wheat breeding program. एंड उन दिनों में जब ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन शुरू हो रहा था, ये दोनों साइंटिस्ट थे पूसा दिल्ली में, जो पूरा देश में अपनी ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन का तैयारी और उसकी जो प्रचार किए और उसकी जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन हुआ, ये दोनों लोग इसमें शामिल थे as the key people, especially गेहूं की breeding and wheat breeding. These were the two names that were really on the top of the list. And I was so fortunate to have them both as my external guides and my mentors. Now, Dr. MS Swaminathan was my external guide. He was my mentor for my work on triticale. Triticale, some people would have heard of this name, triticale. Triticale is actually a hybrid between wheat and rye. Triticum is the scientific name for wheat, and sickle is the scientific name for rye. These two were hybridized to form a new man-made crop called triticale. And MS was one of the persons who actually pushed me to work in this particular field. And then he planted in me the seed to make me preserve desi seeds, to become the seed keeper I am today. I think he planted a seed in me, and I will discuss in detail how he did that. मेरा एक बीज रक्षक बनने के लिए जो उन्होंने एक बीज मेरे खोपड़ी में बोया, उसके बारे में भी बात करना चाहूंगा. And definitely he was a guiding spirit for me in those days. This picture of MS, as he was fondly called by all of us, is at the Pusa campus. It is the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, and where he is standing is where our research station has its wheat experimental plots. तो इधर हम गेहूं की varieties को test करते थे. This is where we tested a lot of our varieties. This is where I used to visit time to time to hear the big man speak and get some nuggets of knowledge and gems of knowledge from him. And Delhi में ये campus में, this is actually the campus where the green revolution in India began. And especially the wheat revolution was definitely here, and we all were a part of it in those days. And today, आज आप Google में देखेंगे तो this is our ICR experimental research station in Pusa. And of course, in those days, all this Nanaji Deshmukh Plant Phenomics Center, which was recently inaugurated by Narendra Modi ji, was not there. The National Phytotron facility was not there. Shiv Mandir was always there. And P11 is this particular plot, which had a very important role to play in how I looked at agriculture and who I am today. तो ये P11 प्लॉट में क्या हुआ, इसका एक घटना के बारे में मैं आपके साथ डिस्कस करना चाहूंगा, जहां एक बहुत ही एक ऐसा घटना हुआ इधर, जिसकी वजह से मेरा जो सोच था एग्रीकल्चर पे और जो आज मैं हूं, उस पे एक बहुत गहरा प्रभाव है. ये प्लॉट नंबर 11 पे, एंड ये 1979 ये plot, this is a picture of that particular plot. And what are you seeing here? There was a big storm in Delhi the previous night, the previous day. There was a huge storm. इसको हम शमाल बोलते हैं. It was the month of March. and the wheat was all getting slowly maturing for harvest. And a very thunderstorm, huge thunderstorm with heavy winds came. And in this plot number 11 in Pusa, what you see here is this entire desi wheat, which is bansi wheat. It's a scientific name, Triticum durum. ये जो देसी बंसी गेहूं था वो पूरा का पूरा सत्यानाश हो गया था वो शमाल में। ये ड्वार्फ हाइब्रिड जो आप पीछे देख रहे हैं वो एकदम सुरक्षित खड़ा था। The dwarf hybrid in the background, that wheat you could see was standing proud. The entire storm had not damaged it. The storm and the hail that fell, nothing damaged it, and it was standing proud. There were many varieties of the tall into dwarf wheat hybrids, but the desi wheat, which was bansi wheat, आज भी आपको मिलता है ये बंसी वैरायटी। एंड ये बंसी गेहूं जो भारतवर्ष में 2000 साल से एक प्राचीन वैरायटी है जो 2000 साल से भारत देश में उगाते हैं हम। It's a 2000-year-old wheat, a Triticum durum wheat, which was been grown in India. And we used to grow this as an indigenous desi wheat variety. And it was tested against the hybrid dwarfs. And this is what had happened in the field. And Dr. Swaminathan had asked the young wheat breeders of the country to come there because he wanted to discuss something. So उन्होंने बुलाया हमको शमाल के अगले दिन और हम लोग सब पहुंचे उधर प्लॉट नंबर 11 पूसा में, और ये दिखा हमको बंसी वीट टोटल खलास, बिल्कुल सत्यानाश हो गया था, लेकिन हाइब्रिड गेहूं जो है एकदम सुरक्षित, एकदम अपराइट खड़ा था। So Dr. Swaminathan asked us, he said, see, the desi bansi wheat has collapsed and the T into D matlab tall into dwarf hybrids. The tall into dwarf hybrids are standing unaffected by the form. What does this indicate? उन्होंने पूछा कि देखो बंसी वेट तो गिर गया है, ये टॉल इन टी इंटू डी हाइब्रिड जो है एकदम खड़े हैं, सारे के सारे हाइब्रिड जो है खड़े हैं, लेकिन बंसी वेट जो है खलास सत्यानाश हो गया है। इसका मतलब क्या है? उन्होंने पूछा, he just asked a group of us, we were a motley group of about 17 or 18 scientists who are all wheat breeders, and in those days being a wheat breeder was like, you were the Rolls Royce of Indian agriculture. And when he asked us this question, then we started answering. So a lot of people gave different answers. Most of us said that it shows that the T into D dwarf hybrids are resilient to adverse climatic conditions. Hybrids are superior to desi wheat varieties. Desi wheat cannot withstand extremes of weather. Hybrids are the answer for the future of India. And some of them were also, people who would like to suck up to the big man. And a few of them said that Dr. Swaminathan is the god of Indian agriculture. So all this, was going on, तो कुछ लोग बोले कि hybrids जो है वो extreme वातावरण से कुछ उनको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, वो खड़े रहते हैं। हाइब्रिड वीट्स सुपीरियर है देसी गेहूं से, और देसी गेहूं जो है एक्सट्रीम वेदर को बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकता है, गिर जाता है। हाइब्रिड्स ही इंडिया का फ्यूचर है। और कुछ लोग जो है थोड़ा चमचागिरी करने वाले थे, उन लोगों ने सीधा बोल दिया कि डॉक्टर स्वामीनाथन इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर की देवता है। तो ये सब चल रहा था, लेकिन डॉक्टर स्वामीनाथन ने कुछ आंसर नहीं दिए थे। वो सुनते गए he heard all these inputs from us, but he actually didn't speak for quite some time. He kept walking around and he kept looking at the bansi wheat, which was all fallen on the ground. And what he went on to say shocked every one of us. डॉक्टर स्वामीनाथन ने तो कुछ नहीं बोला, हम लोग बोलते गए, कुछ चमचागिरी कर रहे थे, कुछ बोल रहे थे कि देसी गेहूं एकदम बेकार है, हाइब्रिड ही इंडिया का फ्यूचर है, ये सब बोलते गए, लेकिन डॉक्टर स्वामीनाथन ने कुछ नहीं बोला। उन्होंने बस घूमते रहे, ये बंसी वीट की खेत पे घूमते रहे और उन्होंने बस कुछ बोले नहीं, एक सोच में खो गए थे. ही वॉज लॉस्ट इन थॉट. एंड जब उन्होंने उनके मुंह खोला तो हम एकदम चौंक गए, इतना शॉक लग गया कि ये आदमी जो ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन का बाप माना जाता है, ही हु इज कंसिडर्ड द फादर ऑफ ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन, एक्चुअली हैड दिस टू से. एंड व्हाट ही हैड टू से आई विल शेयर इन माय नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. डॉक्टर स्वामीनाथन का एक अलग ही सोच था. ही हैड अ कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट टेक ऑन दिस. ही सेड, ये पूसा की ये आईसीआर के एक्सपेरिमेंटल प्लॉट्स में हम लोग मूल तोल बराबर नहीं कर रहे हैं. He said we are not comparing apples to apples here. What we are seeing here is that desi wheats cannot tolerate urea and fertilizer application. उन्होंने बताया कि इससे स्पष्ट पता चलता है कि देसी गेहूं को यूरिया और एनपीके डालने से वो बर्दाश्त नहीं कर पाता है. बिकॉज एक्सपेरिमेंटल प्लॉट में तो हर प्लॉट में हम लोग फर्टिलाइजर दिया था. We had given fertilizer to every experimental plot, and Dr. Swaminathan's take here was that desi wheats cannot tolerate chemical fertilizer. Because of fertilizer, they grow tall and lanky, and they have no strength to withstand the storms. उन्होंने बताया कि ये एनपीके और यूरिया की वजह से देसी गेहूं जो है एकदम लंबा, पतला और लंबा होके ये शमाल में वो गिर गया है, ये तूफान में वो गिर गया है. अगर ये देसी गेहूं को बिना यूरिया और एनपीके हम लोग उगाते थे तो वो बहुत ही सुरक्षित रहता और तूफान उसका कुछ भी नुकसान नहीं कर पाता. He said that if these desi wheats, the indigenous wheats, had been grown without fertilizer, they would have been very strong and they would have withstood the storm. This was his answer to us. This was his take to us. It shocked all of us. Nobody thought like that. Nobody thought. And that is why I say this man, as a human being, I find him extremely evolved. See, he could have easily claimed a victory for his hybrid wheats, and he could have, his ego could have been boosted up, and he could have felt so happy that all his young scientists are praising his work, and he could have published this in a research journal, and everybody would have published it and read it and quoted him, saying that desi wheats are no match for hybrid wheats. But look at the sensitivity of the man. This is what I want you to think about. उसकी जो सेंसिटिविटी देखिए, वो आसानी से इसको एक अपनी देसी गेहूं का हार मान के जो है इसको एक पब्लिश करके न्यूज़पेपर में आर्टिकल लिख के उसका खुद का ईगो बहुत बूस्ट कर सकते थे. लेकिन उन्होंने कितना सेंसिटिवली एक फैक्ट को देखा और उन्होंने बताया कि ये मूल तोल जो हम कर रहे हैं, this comparison we are doing with indigenous and hybrid wheats, it is flawed because we are not giving the conditions that the indigenous wheat, देसी गेहूं को जो conditions चाहिए वो हम नहीं दे रहे हैं. हम उसको यूरिया और एनपीके डाल के हम बोल रहे हैं तुम compete करो dwarf hybrid से, वो नहीं कर पाएगा. देखिए, this is where I saw the human Dr. MS Swaminathan, not the scientist. Of course, it is a scientific comment what he made, but this was a human being talking. And यहां तक कि मैं बोलता हूं कि this is a very spiritual thought. एक टाइप की स्पिरिचुअलिटी होना चाहिए अगर ऐसी एक इंसाइट एक आदमी को देखने का है जो खुद का एक्सपेरिमेंट में भी एक देसी वैरायटी को उसका मूल तोल बराबर करने की सोच रहा है. This is what I would like each one of you to know about Dr. MS Swaminathan. He was not just he was not just an egoistic scientist. He was a very, very, very sensitive human being. And that is what I would like you all to cherish. This had a tremendous impact on me. इन्होंने जो बोला देसी गेहूं के बारे में कि उसको यूरिया एनपीके देके हम उसको कमजोर कर दिया, वरना वो तूफान को जरूर वो सुरक्षित रहता है इसमें. So when he said this, everything that I had championed for as a wheat breeder, in those days being a wheat breeder in agriculture in India is like you're the top of the rank, and I was like in the top of the scientists in that era. And somewhere inside what he said made so much truth that are we doing the right thing? हम लोग क्या ये हरा क्रांति जो हम ले आ रहे हैं, ये तो मैं 1970s की बात कर रहा हूं, ये जो मैं कर रहा हूं वो ठीक है क्या? क्या हम मूल तोल सच में अच्छी तरह से कर रहे हैं कि क्या हो रहा है इधर? ये एक सोच जो है बढ़ते 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 मेरी लाइफ में तो बहुत ही बड़ा एक बदलावट के लिए वो कारण बना. This introspection of this one observation of Dr MS Swaminathan changed my entire perception. In those days, I was like the creme de la creme of Indian agriculture. But this one thing, what he mentioned, had a deep impact on me. And later on, it made me actually change my profession, because I could not come to terms with what we are doing with chemical agriculture. That's why I went on to become an architect, and then my entire professional career was that of an architect, till Gurudev brought me back to agriculture, but in a 360-degree other way, where in desi variety, natural farming, prakritik kheti, chemical-free agriculture, go-adharit agriculture is now my passion. So this is something very beautiful about Dr. MS Swaminathan that I wanted to share with you. This is one point. Second point, what I wanted to share with you, what was actually the situation before the Green Revolution? I'm talking about the latter 60s. देखिए हमारी देश में 1965-66 और 66-67 में बहुत बड़ा ड्राउट हुआ था, जब बारिशें एकदम फेल हो गए थे, and we had 2 successive years of drought where we did not actually have food to feed the people, and we had to rely on a government program from the United States called the Public Law PL 480 program. This PL 480 program was a very, very, very disgusting thing for our country. Disgusting means वो अपने को एक गुलाम बनाने का एक trap था. It was a trap that would enslave India, because PL 480 was, see, America had excess food grains. अमेरिका के पास जरूरत से ज्यादा गेहूं था, and it wanted to get rid of that to boost its economy. So what it said was, countries in need can buy it in their own currency. Matlab, India can buy wheat under PL 480 program by paying Indian rupees. Because we did not have foreign exchange those days. You know how difficult foreign exchange was in those days. Very difficult. We didn't have much foreign exchange. And we had to, if we could buy in rupees, then this was a great thing for India. But it came with severe conditions. Whatever the US wanted, India had to do. If India did anything little different, then the US will stop the shipment. So during that time, the India-Pakistan war happened. And slowly, India had to take a stand. India had 2 successive droughts. We did not have enough food to feed our people. In those days, Lal Bahadur Shastri, our Prime Minister, came out with a slogan. Every day, one meal you forgo, मतलब हर दिन जो है एक खाना, सुबह की या शाम की खाना आप मत करो, क्योंकि देश में उत्पादन नहीं है, वी डोंट हैव फूड, हमारे पास आहार नहीं है सबको देने के लिए, इसीलिए हर आदमी दिन में एक खाना वो नहीं लेगा. It had come to that stage. इतना खराब था हमारा. It was so bad, the food situation in our country. And then what happened was, America was fighting Vietnam, and India made some political comments on Vietnam. At that time, Lal Bahadur Shastri had passed away. Uska Tashkent mein, mysteriously, he died. And then Indira Gandhi took over. And she took a stand on Vietnam. When she took a stand on Vietnam, Lyndon Johnson took on something very, very, very critical. He started to hit back. So what he did was, he said, every shipment I will monitor. जब एक ship का food खत्म होता है, तभी दूसरा ship आएगा. He said, I am going to monitor every shipload so that only as one ship's food finishes in India, the next ship I will give the food. So he started tightening India. And then he suddenly started to demand the payment in dollars. And there was so much of strain. I remember as a child, my father and mother talking about how if there is no food, what are we going to do? And in my house, in the old days, you know, we used to keep the food in the between the wall. Between the wall, we used to pack food. Ragi, we used to keep there. So my father and mother, they broke the wall to take out ragi because there is famine. There is no food in India. And Lyndon Johnson is stopping the food shipments. And he is tightening the screws in India. That was the scenario. It was so bad. See, this generation today, we don't remember all this. We don't remember all this. We were in really, really bad condition in those days, as far as food security was concerned. And they called this ship-to-mouth country. That means not hand-to-mouth existence, ship-to-mouth. When a ship comes, India will eat. When the next ship comes, India will eat. If ship does not come, India cannot eat. That was the situation. And you could see New York Times is writing something, India is writing something, because Lyndon Johnson was really using food as a political weapon. And 40 million people were facing starvation. They were facing permanent injury because of brain damage, because there was no food. And then Lyndon Johnson was asking for freezing the food commitment. He was freezing the food to India. And we were, finally what happened was, Indira Gandhi had to pick up the phone, speak to Lyndon Johnson, and something she agreed between them. And in frustration, she said, I don't want us to ever have to beg for food grains. And ultimately, Lyndon Johnson gave the food, 3.5 million tons, he gave the food. बहुत डिले करके उन्होंने गेहूं दिया और इतना फ्रस्ट्रेशन कर दिया अपनी नेशन को कि हम लोग सोचे कि आइंदा कभी भी हम इसका भीख नहीं मांगेंगे. And that was the time when the government gave the mandate to the scientists, agriculture scientists of the country, give nation food security. तब वैज्ञानिक एग्रीकल्चर कृषि वैज्ञानिकों को गवर्नमेंट ने एक मैंडेट दिया कि तुम लोग काम करके जो है अपनी देश में फूड सिक्योरिटी इसको ले आओ. एंड दिस इज व्हाट Dr. MS Swaminathan did in bringing the green revolution. देखिए, today in hindsight, we can talk of lot of things, whether we should have gone for millets instead of bringing wheat or what. But in those days, there was no time to think. 40 million people were dying because there was no food in the country. So you had to do whatever it took to give food security to the country. And as scientists, that is what we did. Now, Dr. MS Swaminathan, even in 1978, this was in the FICCI auditorium in Delhi, I attended that particular talk of his. He said that do not ever think that this should be treated as an evergreen revolution. This is a green revolution, but don't make it an evergreen revolution by overusing subsidized agriculture chemicals, which would ruin soil health. And today, exactly this is happening all across country. So even then, in 1978, when we were all the young scientists at that time, Dr. Swaminathan was very clear. This is not an evergreen revolution. He said in that state when 40 million people were dying in the country, 40 million लोग मर रहे थे भूख से, तब जो है जो भी करने, केमिकल डालने का है, हाइब्रिड डालने का है, कुछ भी करके एक फूड सिक्योरिटी अपनी देश में ले आना था, उन्होंने किया। लेकिन उनको वो टाइम पे भी वो सोच था कि इससे बहुत बुरा प्रभाव पड़ेगा अगर हम इसको लगातार यूरिया फर्टिलाइजर फेंक के जरूरत से ज्यादा फेंक के हम लोग एग्रीकल्चर करेंगे, कृषि करेंगे, तो इस पे बुरा असर पड़ेगा। He knew very well that overuse of chemicals is going to kill the soil and it will ultimately lead to the destruction of our health. And therefore he said, do not think this is a stopgap arrangement. We have to feed the nation, so we have to give food security. We are bringing in hybrid wheat. We are making hybrid rice. We are giving fertilizers with subsidy by the government. Urea is subsidized. NPK is subsidized. Everything is subsidized. We want to just bring in food security. After the two Bihar and Eastern UP famines, we had good rains. The hybrid wheat started working. We achieved food security. There is no doubt about this. इतना तो हमने किया. So, but always remember, Dr. MS Swaminathan and the scientists, well, they were like soldiers. देखो, वो एक जय किसान जय जवान, वो तो उस टाइम का स्लोगन था. We were both the same. We were like soldiers. If the commanding officer says, go and fight, you just go and fight. You don't try to question is why we should fight. Can we not do a peace deal now? We can't do all that. You go and fight, you go and fight. Same thing with scientists. Give food security, we give food security. This is how, at that position of power, at that crisis moment, Dr. MS had to take a decision. And he took a decision because the government mandate was give us maximum yield per acre and give us food security. And that he achieved. That he achieved. Okay. So let us try to understand the background and the context when this happened. He also, in his latter years, see, the real MS Swaminathan surfaces after he retired from the government. Even in those days, he was a great proponent of the intellectual property rights. And he always highlighted the critical role played by tribal and rural families, particularly women, in the selection of plants and animals for domestication, and pointed out the recognition of intellectual property rights of communities that have not only conserved biodiversity, but also value addition by the WIPO. उन्होंने बहुत ही इसमें, he played a huge thing. He talked about biohappiness. And he said biohappiness results from conservation, sustainable and equitable use of bioresources. Like a Silicon Valley for IT, he talked about a bio valley for biotechnology. And he talked about special agricultural zones on the lines of special economic zones. And in Rajasthan, he advocated an arid zone, arid special agricultural zone in the Indira Gandhi Canal area. See, he had huge vision. After he retired from the government, you see the real MS Swaminathan. The real MS Swaminathan talks about sustainable agriculture. He talks about intellectual property rights. He talks about empowerment of the marginal farmers. He talks about empowerment of women. He talks about the use of technology. He is talking like special economic zones. He is talking special agriculture zones. He understood the power of doing chemical-free agriculture, sustainable agriculture. And if you see the work of MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, which he set up after he retired, you see all the work is in the same way. I worked with Dr MS Swaminathan Foundation when I was consulting for Tata Coffee at the Devarkadu estate in Coorg, where they have organic coffee. And I was introducing the natural farming techniques in the Devarkadu estate of Tata Coffee. And the people who are providing the platform for that was Dr. MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. So the real MS Swaminathan you see after he retires. And that one instance in plot number 11 in Pusa, when he talked about Mool Tol Tikna, we are not comparing apples to apple. That is the man that we should understand who MS was. And if we go on further, we see that he talks about women. उन्होंने बहुत बड़ा महत्व दिया औरत लोग जो अपनी लेडी किसान लोग हैं उनके लिए मार्केट लिंकेजेस क्रेडिट लैंड ओनरशिप he always talked about adopting a woman centric approach यानी वो सभी आधारित है लेडी किसान पे वो औरत किसान पे है ना उस पे आधारित ये पूरा जो लैंड क्रेडिट लैंड ओनरशिप मार्केट लिंकेजेस सारा का सारा उन्होंने महसूस किया था कीपिंग वुमेन एज द सेंटर एंड for him green revolution was not merely an expansion but improving productivity and evergreen revolution is the improvement of productivity in perpetuity तो उन्होंने दो टर्म्स बनाए थे एक ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन इज फॉर इम्प्रूव्ड प्रोडक्टिविटी ही केम अप विद टू टर्म्स ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन फॉर इम्प्रूव्ड प्रोडक्टिविटी एंड एवरग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन where you have improved productivity for infinite time in perpetuity, which means it is sustainable agriculture. So he actually promoted sustainable agriculture. He talked about integrated practices. He talked about, vermicompost, and he talked about by using biotechnology for the bacteria, for the nutrient solubilizing bacteria. And one more slide that I want to show is he considered malnutrition in India. It's a silent emergency, calling for the need to divert the nation's focus from food security at national level to nutrition security at individual level. So he talks about food security versus nutritional security. ये पोषण की सुरक्षितता और उत्पादन की सुरक्षितता. This food security versus if Dr. Swaminathan had got a mandate from the government saying, get the nation nutritional security. Instead of saying, get nation food security. अगर गवर्नमेंट ने उस टाइम एक मैंडेट देता था एक कृषि वैज्ञानिकों को कि आप पोषण की सिक्योरिटी ले आइए पूरा देश में, लेकिन गवर्नमेंट ने बताया क्या कि आप फूड सिक्योरिटी उत्पादन बढ़ा के फूड सिक्योरिटी. सो इफ द गवर्नमेंट हैड सेड इंक्रीज न्यूट्रिशन पर एकड़ rather than yield per acre, even though we had a food security, he always said that there is a silent emergency. This emergency happened after the national emergency. He used the term emergency. He says there is a silent emergency, which is malnutrition. We got food security, but is everybody in India having enough nutrition? Even today, we don't have full nutrition for every citizen in India. So when we look at Dr. MS Swaminathan, I would like you to look at the man he was, the sensitivity with which he did his research, The soldier he was, because when he was given an order, he executed the order. And then post-retirement, the beliefs he had when it came to agriculture. तो ये 3 चीजों पे नजर डालिए. एक, वो एक इंसान, कैसा इंसान था वो, इंसानियत क्या था, ह्यूमन वैल्यू क्या था उनमें. 2, एक सोल्जर, एक जवान है ना, एक सोल्जर, उसका कैसा आदमी था. जब कोई ऑर्डर दिया तो वो ऑर्डर को निभाया उन्होंने. और रिटायरमेंट के बाद उनकी बिलीफ्स, वो किन चीजों पे विश्वास किया एग्रीकल्चर में. इन तीनों को अगर हम गौर से देखें तब आपको समझ में आएगा कि ये महान व्यक्ति कैसा एक व्यक्ति था. If you focus on these 3 things, his human values, his soldier-like devotion in science to execute an order, and his post-retirement, the beliefs he had inside about how agriculture should be, you will get a glimpse of this extraordinary person who definitely shaped my life for sure. If today I am doing chemical-free agriculture, if I am saving indigenous seeds, in 1979 at the Pusa plot number 11, what he told me had that impact on me. So I hope I have been able to give you a glimpse of this vast, gigantic personality, and for you to understand in context where India was when Dr. MS Swaminathan brought in the Green Revolution. We were in such a horrible place. And after that, of course, today we are self-sufficient. Food security is there. Nutritional security is always questionable. I hope we will all remember Dr. MS Swaminathan for the wonderful human being that he was. And may his soul rest in peace.